Welcome to the All Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. On this edition of the All Around Joe podcast, I'm going to be talking about how to set up a fitness program. And if you are listening to this, you can listen along, and I'm going to be talking about how I set it up. But I'm also going to be doing a screen recording. So if you wanted to watch this, I would highly recommend that you head over to allaroundjoe.com/171 or head over to facebook.com/allaroundjoe and look on the videos. And then there's a little tab there for video podcasts, because if you didn't know this, I video all of my podcasts. So hopefully I can get through this without my screen software crashing on me, which has done about 3 times so far. So this is the third start here. But we're going to be talking about how to set up a fitness program, whether or not it's for yourself, or if you want to see how I am setting up fitness programs for example, the Get Better Project, which you can hop on board with and do my programming here as I program it by going to thegetbetterproject.com. And this show is actually brought to you by the Get Better Project. So go over to thegetbetterproject.com and you can sign up for the Get Better Project programming, where I have videos set up for every single workout. You can ask questions on the private Facebook group where the programming is published, and you can get all of your basically questions answered, and movement questions and videos and all that fun stuff all ready for you, so you can just follow it. The program is designed for somebody who is going to a gym or is just looking for body weight, or I'm actually going to be throwing in a kettlebell program as well, which isn't quite up there yet as this is recording. But because I'm living in the van and doing a lot of the stuff that I'm writing as a kettlebell version, just because it's easier right now, we do, if you can see this video, I am in the van right here, and we do have about 400 pounds of bumper weights and barbells and all that fun stuff. But it is cold. It's about 35 degrees right now we're actually in Cookeville, Tennessee. So it's pretty cold, which means we don't really want to pull out the barbells and the bumper weights in this weather. But it's really easy to pull out a kettlebell and do a kettlebell version of the workout, which is super nice and actually is very hard, guys. If you don't do many kettlebell workouts and get creative with the kettlebell, then you're missing out, because there's a lot of interesting stuff. For example, I recently did a program where it was just 10 rounds of 10 kettlebell thrusters with one kettlebell. So you just have the one kettlebell, you do 5 thrusters on one arm, you switch to the other arm, do 5 thrusters on the other arm, then you take about 2 minutes rest, and then you repeat that 10 rounds of 10. That was a rough one. I did it with a 70-pound kettlebell. You could do it with whatever kettlebell works. You should do it unbroken if you're going to try that one out. But it was very hard. Just holding that one kettlebell underneath in your front rack there is tough to do. So what I'm going to be doing today is, if you're watching this, you can see that I have it set up. So I'm programming Monday through Saturday. And then I have it set up with the structure here. So monostructural gymnastics and weightlifting, and then in long, short, or I should say short, medium, and long sets or durations of the particular workout. And I get all this because I'm a CrossFit Level 1 coach, so I am a huge advocate of utilizing their monostructural gymnastics and weightlifting design of their programming, and then looking at it from a constantly varied standpoint so that you can pretty much not know what you're going to have thrown at you. But that being taken into account, we're always looking at the wide majority of athletes that have particular issues with things, so that we can program and make you guys better. And there will also be options, if you're following the Get Better Project programming, to do things or sub in and out things that will be better for you and make you a better athlete. So you're not always doing things that you're good at, although you do want to do things that you're good at every once in a while, just so that you basically keep the pump primed for that. So the way that we're setting things up is, like I said, we have the monostructure, we have the gymnastics, and we have the weightlifting. So if you would imagine that just cycles through. So you do a monostructural day, then you do a gymnastics and a weightlifting day, then you do a monostructural, a gymnastics, and a weightlifting day, and then it would flip over to gymnastics, and then weightlifting and monostructural, gymnastics, weightlifting, monostructural, and then just weightlifting, then monostructural gymnastics, then weightlifting, monostructural, and gymnastics. And then what I like to do is mix in the duration as well, so that although it's supposed to be constantly varied, and at times it will come in and you don't really know, and if we wanted to make it completely constantly varied, we could just pull a number out of a hat, you know, like 1 through 3 for long, short, or medium. But I like to have some sort of idea for how long you want that program to be. So I'm thinking, you know, if we're going to do something with short, it's going to be around, you know, 5 minutes or less. If we're going to do medium would kind of cover a wide range there. So it would be like 6 minutes to, let's say, 15 minutes. And then I would say that long is going to be 15 minutes or more. So if you're looking at this video, what I have set up for, as I'm programming right now, Monday, December 3rd, which is coming up here in a few days, it would be a monostructural day, and it's set for long. Okay, so long monostructural day would have had something set up for you so that the time before it would have been medium or short, so you're not repeating that same long. Although it wouldn't be bad to do that from time to time, and every once in a while I'll throw in a day where I don't have anything in there, and it will just be a completely random day. And there's nothing wrong with having a completely random day so that you can throw things off. I mean, that's the beauty of the constantly varied portion of CrossFit, is that it's okay to have something that's completely different, and it's okay to do things that are different intensity levels as well. So that's something that we may or may not get into today, is the intensity levels that you program can be actually put in there, especially if you're doing the program for yourself. So this could be somebody that's looking at, oh, that I want to know how Joe's programming for the Get Better project, or I'm following the Get Better project and I want to know, hey, my whoop tells me this, I feel like I'm doing this particular thing, but it's not necessarily, let's say, I feel like I'm kind of like trashed. So even though the workout looks like it's going to be really hard and intense, I'm going to take it to a lighter intensity, and maybe I'm going to do that workout that Joe just programmed as an interval, or I'm going to ask him, hey, how should I do this based off of my recovery and how I'm feeling. As you know, tools like the Whoop or the Oura Ring are just tools, so that they don't always mean that it's cut and dry. Hey, I woke up and I'm red on my Whoop, but I feel great. I'm not going to do anything that day. So you have to take that with a grain of salt, and you may end up doing something. And I've heard people a number of times say, oh, I was red that day and I started doing my snatches and then it actually felt really good and I PR'd. So you have to know that it's just a data point. It's not an end all be all. And sometimes you will follow it and sometimes you won't follow it. And that's totally fine. But you have to have it as a data point, along with other things like how you're actually feeling, how you thought that you slept that night, you know, the amount of stress that you've been taking on lately, taking all those things into account. And if you are feeling trashed, it's okay to not necessarily go as hard, or, you know, do something that's an interval, or let's say it's a 10-minute piece. You just kind of go through the motions and, you know, you groove your joints, you groove your positions so that you can get better at them, but you don't necessarily need to take the intensity all the way up, because sometimes your body doesn't need all of that intensity. So getting back to this, let's say we had Monday, December 3rd. We're going to do a monostructural long day. So what that could look like is monostructural. We're looking at something like running, rowing, riding the bike, something that's like cardio-esque. So if we want to go long, we could do something like, you know, a 10K row, let's say, or, you know, run for 30 minutes. Something that would be cool about putting, you know, run for 30 minutes is that you could have the intensity set on there too. So if you're feeling really good for that run for 30 minutes day, you could have it set up where, sorry guys, there is a lot of police action flying by me right now. About 10 police cars just flew by. So anyway, you have the 30-minute running day, and you could have some notes on there that say like, hey, if you're feeling great, I would like you to try and kick this up so that you're at about, you know, 90% of your maximum effort, and you're just holding on just below that red line and try and see how far you could cover in 30 minutes. Or if, you know, you're feeling okay, maybe you pull that back and you're, let's say you're, you know, you can't really talk to somebody because you're like right on the edge of being able to talk to them. Let's gauge it off of that. And then if you're not feeling so good, you're going to do it as a complete cardio day where you're just doing LSD style training, long, slow distance, not the drug. So you are just going at a conversational pace is what they call it for 30 minutes, and you're just getting that very lowish intensity, more what they would traditionally call like a fat burning or base cardio building day, which is totally fine. I think we actually underdo that in CrossFit. We think too much about going intense, and if you are a very competitive CrossFit athlete, I think it's necessary to add in more of these LSD or long slow distance cardiovascular days in order to build up that engine so that when you're in the middle of a hard Metcon, your body is actually utilizing oxygen to its maximum. Okay. So that was what a monostructural long day, and it could be 30 minutes rowing, riding, running. It doesn't really matter, although we want to have it varied somewhat. And it's funny, I'm going to mention this again, is you want it to be varied, but as a programmer, you're still thinking of, how can I put these things in that people need? So if we haven't been doing a lot of running, then I need to put in some running so that you have that as a sharp point to your program, meaning that you're doing well with it. You know what it's going to feel like when you get that in a competition, or, just to be well-rounded. Not to say that you need to do a competition. But then the next day, gymnastics and weightlifting for short, all right? So that way, that we're looking at something that's gymnastics. Maybe we're talking about a pull-up movement, and then weightlifting. So for pulling, then what do we want to do for weightlifting? Do we want to go to a different, like a pushing, do a push-pull, and do something like a bench press for the weightlifting component, or a push press or a push jerk? So it's supposed to be short and fast. Maybe we'll do like a 21-15-9 of, well, a good example of this one could be gymnastics and weightlifting. Like Fran would be 21-15-9 of thrusters and pull-ups. We could do that. Or we could flip it around and do pull-ups and thrusters, or we could do something even faster and do a 21-15-9 of, let's say, push press. We can make it even heavy. We could do 135 and 95 push press with chest to bar pull-ups, and that way it could be scalable, right? If you are advanced at that, and you could do 21 unbroken chest to bar pull-ups and 21 unbroken push presses at 135, then that's awesome, and that's who we'd be programming it for, because it's supposed to be fast under 5 minutes. But you could also be scaled down, so the person that can't do 21 unbroken chest to bar pull-ups could pull that back and do regular pull-ups, or even banded pull-ups, or whatever they need to be doing. And you could lower the weight to a weight that you think you could do the 21 push presses unbroken. Okay, so that's how we'd set that one up. And we had the running the day before, then we get the short, and then we have a monostructural gymnastics and weightlifting day at a medium length. Okay, so what we're looking at then is we have monostructural. So let's say we throw the assault bike at them, and let's say gymnastics. Yesterday we did shoulder to overhead, yesterday we did, shoulder to overhead or push press. We did push press. And then weightlifting, we did the push press and the pull-ups. Okay, so we've got gymnastics. We could do gymnastics today, something that's different. Let's call it burpees. So that's not as super taxing. Let's say that those 21 and 15 and 9 were something that might make someone sore. So burpees are a good kind of cardiovascular. So now you're riding the bike, you're hopping off the bike, you're doing burpees, and then you've got a weightlifting movement again. So what's something that's not going to be quite the same that we hit just the other day? We could do some hip hinging, so we can have that be cleans or snatches, let's say, with the barbell. Since we're doing weightlifting, get some heavy hip hinging in there. So we just rode the bike, our quads are probably going to be tired from that. Burpees got our engine blown up. And then we have weightlifting. So from that, going from the burpee, let's call it some cleans. And since it's going to be medium length, we can, and with the bike, I like the idea of saying, hey, we're going to do 15-minute AMRAP with the bike, because everybody is so different on the bike that it's hard to do. I want to make it a specific range with a number of rounds. We could figure it out, but it's easier to just say, hey, I want people to be working, and they're probably going to be working on this one, without much rest because of the movements for that particular period of time. So we're going to do it a little bit longer. 15 minutes because we want it 6 to 15 minutes for the medium. Actually, let's take it down to 12. We'll do 12 minutes, and we'll do let's do 12 calories on the bike, 12 and 8, 12 for the guys, 8 for the girls, and we'll do, again, let's do 12, let's keep it at 12, 12 burpees, and then we'll do 12 power cleans at 95 and 65. So this one's going to be moving pretty good. You're not going to have a lot of time there to rest with that particular weight. It should be that you're moving. You got to move it. So that was the 3. We'll do a 12-minute AMRAP of 12 and 8 on the assault bike. We'll do 12 burpees, and we will do 12 power cleans. So we're going to keep people moving on that one. And then the next day, we have gymnastics work. It's just gymnastics, and it's supposed to be longer. So we're looking at gymnastics here, and only gymnastics. We could put a couple of different movements together if we wanted to, making it long. So think about some gymnastic things that we haven't worked on yet. We could do muscle ups. We haven't done any muscle ups yet or lately. We haven't done any handstand walking. That's a fun one. Handstand push-ups, although those handstand push-ups and handstand walking are kind of, two of the same muscle group that we're looking at there. We did do burpees already. Other gymnastics things that we are looking at doing. I guess gymnastics depends on what you could be doing. Usually it's a body weight style movement. So a sit-up. A lot of people like sit-ups and like to work on their abdominals. So we could do sit-ups or a toes to bar. And I like pairing a toes to bar with a muscle up for people that have their muscle ups, because it's really hard to do muscle ups after doing toes to bar. But it's kind of a fun combination of things to do. So we could put those particular things together. Or, we could go completely different and do some sort of a long interval piece that we want to work on gymnastics. So when you're programming for a lot of people, sometimes there are people that, almost always there are people that can work on gymnastics unless you have a really high-level gymnastics background. And what that means is we could set this up to be like since it's supposed to be long, we could do a 21-minute EMOM. So every minute on the minute, you do X number of repetitions. So let's say for the first minute, we do 5 muscle ups, ring muscle ups, okay? Then on minute 2, we have you do 50 feet of handstand walking, all right? And then on minute 3, we have you do 12 toes to bar. All right, so that's a pretty good one. And then if you guys have problems on that, what you would do is in the program, you say if you can't make it through the minute or you can't get the desired number of reps through the minute, you just take the rest of the minute off. You finish those reps. So let's say that on the second round, it was a little bit ambitious to do 5 muscle ups. So you get to 4 muscle ups, but you rest, you hop up, and you do the 5th muscle up, but you're 10 seconds into the next minute. You would just wait that additional 50 seconds, and then you would get started on your handstand walking again, because this one is going to be very shoulder and core intensive for a long duration, right? We said 21 minutes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be completely working for those 21 minutes, but you can see it's a longer drawn out process, okay? So then the next day we would have a short weightlifting and monostructural day. We could do something... We could put a couple of things together here. We could do like kettlebell swings and running. If we did running the last monostructural day, then we probably should pick another thing. I know that running can be hard on people if they're not doing it all the time. Or you could say, hey, my athletes need to run more. It's nice weather outside, summertime, so let's have them run more, right? So we're looking at a short, so sprint-ish type running and weightlifting, or weightlifting and running day. So if we're going to program something like that, we could probably do it where there is actually, for the sprinting type thing, we could do running, but I say, for a sprint, let's do a bike, or a rower. So for a rower, we will do let's go with 150 meters on the rower, and then we will do 10 snatches, power snatches at 135, okay? Let's say if it's going to take us 10 power snatches at 135. We had 150 meters on the rower, 10. So those are both going to be hip hinging. They're going to be kind of hard to do one after the other. So actually, let's take 135 down to 5, and let's do. So we'll do 150 meters on the rower, 5 power snatches at 135, and we'll do that for 5 rounds. Okay, so we're looking at like, let's call it 30 seconds for the snatches, and the rower is going to change based off of how well you do with the snatches, because the snatches are going to spike your heart rate. But it might end up being a little bit more than 5 minutes, but it's going to be around there. The people that are doing that unbroken and doing it well will be probably significantly under 5 minutes for that one. 150 meter row and 5 power snatches at 135. So you see how we're doing this, and we're looking at, like I said, the monostructural, the gymnastics, and the weightlifting, and then we're just breaking up long, medium, or short. So that's how I look at it. And then if you wanted to completely sub something, so what we haven't talked about before is if we had a workout setup, like let's bump back to that first one. Obviously the monostructural stuff, you can always, if you don't have any equipment, you can always put in running for that. And then you end up doing a lot of running, which is fine as long as you're taking care of your joints and making sure that you're not overtraining any of those particular running muscles. But let's say that we had our gymnastics and weightlifting and we don't have any equipment. So our first workout that we did, which was, like I said, the push presses and the chest to bar pull-ups. How are we going to sub those things if we only have a kettlebell or we have no weights? Okay, first off, if we only have a kettlebell, we can do 21, 15, 9 kettlebell push press. All right, so we got the kettlebell. We could do this a couple different ways. We could do 21, 15, 9, 21 on your right, 21 on your left, or you could split that up. And you could, rather than doing it 21, let's say that we find some even numbers there. So we'll do like 22, so 11 on each side, and then we do 16, 8 on each side, and 10, so 5 on each side. And we could just, because it's kettlebell and you don't probably want to switch in the air, so you do 11 on your right arm, 11 on your left arm, and then for pull-ups, since you don't have a pull-up bar, we could do something like a bent over row with the kettlebell. So you essentially go from doing push presses to bending over and doing a flat back bent over row. So you're doing the pretty close to the same muscle group right there. And that would be a pretty nasty one because you're holding on to something the whole time without really letting it go, ideally. Then if you didn't have any weights, let's say, and you're trying to do something like that, we're looking at taking that same movement pattern, and although the weightlifting we were doing with a barbell or a kettlebell, we're still looking at that same movement pattern. So we could do a 21, 15, 9 of handstand push-ups or a pike push-up if you can't do a handstand push-up. And I always like to do strict handstand push-ups instead of kipping. Excuse me. Unless you're in a competition, because I don't like to put the pressure on the neck. And I would recommend, if you can't do a full strict handstand push-up, then you just do a modified version, so like a pike, or you just do as much range of motion as you can to get that push-up or handstand push-up done. And we're looking at the pull-up then. So if you don't have anything that you can use to modify a pull-up, even like a band, anything like that, then we're going to have to pick a completely different movement pattern. All right. So unfortunately, it's hard to do pulling movements if you have no equipment. Although sometimes you can figure out something to hang on. So you could do a hanging style row. That's always a good one. And a lot of times you can find something to do a row with, all right? So I've had people do it with a laundry basket. I've had people do it with jugs of water. Any of those bent over things you do for a bent over row will suffice to work those same muscle groups as you had with the pull-up. But let's say you don't, all right? So you have nothing. You can do handstand push-ups, and I like to put something that's hard multi-joint in there a lot of times for people. So like burpees. So what I would probably do with that one, if somebody had zero equipment, I was programming for zero equipment, I would say handstand push-ups or pike push-ups, 21 21-15-9 and 21-15-9 of burpees. Okay, so that's going to be pretty darn hard, but we're just trying to get them moving. We know that we cannot train the back muscles as effectively as we would like to, but we're getting a great workout in. So that's how I would set that up if I didn't have any equipment and had to just go for it. All right. So we went over setting up your program for, the full equipment, the kettlebell, and then if you had zero equipment at all, how I would set that up, and then how I'd program. And some people don't do it that way. I've heard of different people programming, not using the monostructural gymnastics and weightlifting style, but actually just looking at, day to day and what did I do and what do I need to fit in there. And I've programmed like that before as well. And sometimes I'll go back and forth if I get tired of using this particular format, or if I see that there's a bunch of weaknesses that people are having on a consistent basis. You can do things like that. You can really get out there and program in a specific way. You can also do weightlifting in conjunction with the Metcon. And so like warm up, weightlifting, Metcon, even like cardio monostructural if you need to get ready for a competition or you're competing, and then cool down. There's all these different ways that you can set up your program. But like they keep saying, CrossFit does work. And I've found as well that I don't need to spend quite as much time in the gym. And as long as I'm using these monostructural gymnastics and weightlifting and the variations and constantly varied and doing different lengths of them, I find that I stay pretty darn strong and I can do a lot of different things, and my body stays very, very fit. So make sure that you keep that in mind, and let me know if you have any questions. I like to hear you guys program. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or you wanted to, make a note on some of this stuff that I'm doing, let me know. I think it's cool. I think that there's not a lot of wrong ways. We can always argue one way or the other and figure out what works for you or what doesn't work for you, and you're always programming for different people. I should also note you're always programming for the best person in your gym or program, okay? And then you're scaling down. You never want to program to the person that is not very good, or that hasn't, I shouldn't say not very good, that hasn't been doing CrossFit for a long time or has not been doing athletics for a long time, because it's harder for that other person to scale up. All right, so scale for the hardest person and then go down backwards. All right. Let me know if you have any questions. Remember, all the show notes and everything that has to do with this podcast are over at allaroundjoe.com/171. And if you would like to get started on my programming over at the Get Better Project, give it a shot. It is at thegetbetterproject.com. I also have my interview podcast over there with top CrossFit athletes, top strength athletes, and top endurance athletes and coaches. So let me know if you like it. Let me know if you'd like to get started, and I hope to talk with you soon. The All Around Joe podcast, we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. I will see you on the next podcast.